Montclair Women's Club. We are extremely excited about this program, but first before we get started, I wanted to say a little bit of a word about the Montclair Women's Club. I am a member of the board. We've got several other board members here, such as Carol Schlein and Liz Lynch and Lois Tige, and am I missing anyone? This club is Melissa Pfeiffer. This club is 103 years old and was founded as a place for women to gather in the community. And there was a trouble point of several years ago where this club was in danger of being sold and redeveloped. And a group of women involved in the club and others in the community stepped forward to say, no, this is part of our history. It's part of the town. It's a very important part of the civic life of the town, and we want to see it continue. I got involved as somebody who loves civic institutions to help revitalize this club. We are renewing the programming. There was a substantial effort to renew the physical building. Many people have not had a chance to see this beautiful facility that has been painted and rejuvenated and lightened up, and it has come alive with all kinds of programming in the evening. The Women's Club itself runs programming every other Friday in the afternoon at 1:30. They have different functions, lectures, talks, musical numbers that engage people in the community. We came on board to add to that for people that can't be available during the day, some programming in the in the evening, as well as on the weekend. And Lois is our membership chair. You can raise your hand. If you have any questions about joining the Montclair Women's Club, for $75, you get access to 3 to 4 programs a month, this beautiful building, and a wonderful community. So there is information there in the back. We are working on repairing this 103-year-old building. So we welcome any contributions for that as well. And with that, I'm especially excited about this program because we have a soft spot for arts, and I understand this was an outgrowth of a wonderful workshop that Nancy gave at the library, and when they were looking for a space to, I heard about these stories, and I had to learn about Moth-style stories. I know NPR, but I wasn't familiar with the Moth format. And we're so excited for these members of the community, some members of the Women's Club, and other people to come and share their stories with them. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nancy and say thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Nancy Leroy, and I'm the coach and coordinator of what we have newly named ourselves, Speak Easy Montclair. I used to be a storyteller. I was first doing it in Washington, D.C. for a group called Story District, which is like the Moth, but actually older than the Moth. And the District of Columbia is one of the few places in the country where the Moth has not performed. But I really loved telling stories and learning how to tell them. And so when I got to Montclair, I was just really interested in trying to get something going here, and it was some effort, but convinced the adult school of Montclair to let us have a class. And that's where I met these amazing women who were extremely enthusiastic and willing to do almost anything asked of them to develop what are really, really great stories. And we had one performance after the class, which was like, I think, a late spring for a small group. And then when the Montclair Women's Club, through one of my colleagues, Liz here, got this going, we were really, really pleased and want to thank the club for letting us use this venue and having all of you here. If anybody's interested, we're thinking of sort of trying to carry this on since we're enjoying it so much. And so we want to keep doing stuff that involves storytelling. And if anyone is interested in knowing more about what we're doing, there is this flyer at the back. It gives contact information. Maybe you have a story you'd like to tell yourself, so please get in touch. Our first storyteller is Helen Fallon. Helen grew up in Rochester, New York, in a large, close-knit family. She now lives in Montclair with her husband and 2 children. As a trustee of the Montclair History Center, Helen gets a kick out of researching and sharing stories of Montclair's history. This is the first time that Helen is going to be telling her own true and personal story. She was a bit of a reluctant storyteller at first, but has come up with this amazing story about childhood discovery. So, our first storyteller, Ellen.
Hi. I'm the baby in my family. There's Mary, Dan, Joe, Phyllis, John, Liz, Mike, Bernie, Frank, Chris, Ann, and then me. I'm the youngest of 12 siblings. So when I was very little, growing up, I really didn't know, I had no idea what it was like to be in a small family of 3 or 4 or even 5 or 6 or 7. All I ever knew was a house full of people. I assumed that that every little girl my age had shared a room and a double bed with 2 of their sisters. I was so glad that my sister Ann was willing to sleep in the middle between Chris and me. And I just assumed that every other first grader enjoyed carrying their niece or nephew around on their hip. It was better than getting a new doll at Christmas. And I figured that every family, when they ventured out in the car, positioned the kids one up, one back, one up, or as we would say, coolie up, coolie back, coolie up, in order to fit as many kids as possible into the car. And I just figured that any family could field a softball team if they chose to, like ours did. But as I would grow up, I would learn that in little ways that my family was a little different. And oddly enough, one of my most distinct memories of learning this involves a bag of cookies. So I think I was in 3rd grade, and I was going for a play date, or whatever we called that in the 70s, to my friend Ellen Winterhorn's house. And she and I recently reconnected on Facebook, but that's another story. Ellen, I even walked the 4 blocks to her house all by myself, and which was surprising even in those days. Ellen was also the youngest in her family. She had 2 older siblings. Ellen had her own room. She had her own bed. And Ellen's house was a little different than mine. There was no pile of shoes and sneakers of all sizes in her front hallway. There were no piles of clothes in the never-ending laundry stream in her basement. In fact, most of her basement was taken up with a very elaborate and meticulous train set, which was a lot of fun. So their house was very neat and tidy. And even to the backyard, where they had a small above-ground pool where we were playing that day, we were enjoying the hours, it seemed like hours of swimming. We were swimming, jumping, doing handstands, making whirlpools. So when we came out, we were famished. Her mom kindly offered some cookies, which we were super excited about. And little did I realize the magnitude this bag of cookies would have on my learning curve. But so Mrs. Winterhorn went over to the cupboard and got the cookies, and when she put them down on the table, I realized that the bag was half full. And I just didn't understand how that was possible. Either in my experience, the bag was either full or the tray was empty. Because we would get a bag of cookies at our house, but they would hit the table and poof, they were gone. And it's not like anyone was piggy and taking more than one. No one would ever take seconds until everyone had at least one cookie, and especially looking out for the baby. But it was just a lot of hands, so you had to keep an ear out, and if you heard that something yummy was coming in, you had to get to it. So a half bag of cookies was just not the kind of thing you would find in the very full household of the Lupiani family. That was just one small way that, as I grew up, I learned that my family was a little bit different than a lot of my peers. It was a little bigger, a little messier. There's a lot more sharing. But yay me, because I'm the baby sister of Mary, Dan, Joe, Phyllis, John, Liz, Mike, Bernie, Frank, Chris, and Ann. Thank you. If this was another type of storytelling show, they would say, if you'd like more information about the Lupiani family, please go to our website where you can see a picture of them. And so this is one of my favorite pictures of my family because I'm not even in it. We were featured in the Holy Family Church Bulletin when there were 11 children. And I'm sure they were like, come on, they have 11, really? So I think my mother was actually pregnant with me in this picture. So.
Thanks, Ellen. That was really fun. Our next storyteller is Shirley Johnson. Shirley is a teller of African American and multicultural folk tales. Adding personal tales to her repertoire has been her latest storytelling venture. Shirley's love of travel has led her to visit West Africa, Europe, Asia, Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and many places in the United States. Shirley's membership in the National Storytelling Network, the National Association of Black Storytellers, the New Jersey Storytelling Guild, New Jersey StoryNet has nurtured her love of story and led her to many ventures for storytelling. Her most recent engagements have been with the New Jersey Storytelling Festival, Montclair's Channel 34 TV, Family Story Hour, and at local assisted living facilities and early childhood centers in Paterson, New Jersey. Future plans include continuing to share her stories throughout the community with children and adults. Shirley?
I'm most familiar with telling folk tales or fables or fantasy, but this is a different kind of story, so I won't start with Once Upon a Time. This is a true story that really happened to me. As my children used to say, back in the day when my youngest daughter was in junior high school, I decided that I was super mom. I could go to work every day and do all the other things too, so I volunteered. Now, I emphasize the word volunteered. I was not begged, cajoled, tricked, or even asked, but I volunteered to take home my daughter's science class's pet rabbits for the vacation. Now notice I said rabbits, as in the plural, not the singular, 2 rabbits. And these were not your cute little white fuzzy bunnies with the pink noses and the pointy ears. No. These were relatives of Bigfoot. They were gray things with long floppy ears and big feet. What was I thinking? Well, I also volunteered not to take them home for a long weekend like Teachers' Convention or Columbus Day, but I volunteered to take home these rabbits for the longest vacation in the whole school calendar, Christmas vacation. 12 whole days. Well, finally the day came when I was to pick up my daughter and these rabbits at the day before Christmas vacation, and I arrived up on the 3rd floor where the rabbits in the science class was housed, and I saw the 2 rabbits, one in a larger cage and the other one in a somewhat smaller cage, and I got the janitor to help my daughter and myself to get these fellas down into the car with all of their paraphernalia and get them on their way home. Well, we made it up to my daughter's room where their assigned locale was to be for the vacation. And we placed the two cages with them side by side in her room, and they seemed to take up a rather large footprint, so we decided it'd be the best idea to put them both in the larger cage and then store the other cage in the garage during the vacation. Well, all went well that day until the evening, family bedtime. We heard a rattling of the cage toward the middle of the night, and we started, what are they doing, trying to escape? We couldn't figure out what the noise was all about. Didn't seem to bother my daughter, so we somehow managed to go back to sleep. Next day, all goes well. We're on day 10. It's going really well, but that noise is still going on, and we are losing much-needed vacation sleep. So the decision was made. We were going to give the fellas their own private room down in the basement. Little did I know that they really needed their privacy. One day when I was doing the laundry and going down into the basement, I heard that rattling noise again. So I opened the door to the back room and, ooh, what did I see?
I tell you, Harry was really a Harry, but Bigfoot wasn't a Bob or a Billy. Bigfoot was a Bertha. No longer would either rabbit be in the cage with the other rabbit. One would be free range, and the other one would be caged. So as the free-range rabbit roamed around the basement, little did I think that there would be rabbit turds all over the basement. I spent my vacation sweeping and cleaning and pushing one in, one out, because you couldn't leave them both imprisoned. One in, one out. Oh, when had I ever wished for vacation to be over? Things were just not going right. Then there was the day, maybe about day 6 or 7, when I heard my husband call from the basement, "Shirley!" Well, I had not heard him call my name in that tone of voice since the time when I accidentally washed the red dress in with his white underwear and turned all his underwear pink. He wasn't really in favor of having pink underwear, but I ran to the bottom of the stairs trying to think of what I might have done wrong and an excuse for having done it when I saw his face looking from me to the cage and from me to the cage. Well, and when I looked, what did I see? But there in the cage was not only the one rabbit, but 4 little pink, squirmy, tiny things. Ew! I didn't even like taking care of full-grown rabbits. What was I going to do with baby rabbits? Well, I called pet lover numero uno, my friend Sandy. Sandy to the rescue. She came over without a how do you do. I asked Sandy, look at this. She said, "Oh, how cute, baby rabbits." "No, this is not cute. What do I do?" Well, she suggested that we remove the father from the cage because, as I understand now, father rabbits do not have good parenting skills. So she wrapped it all around and to keep them warm, and I got the other cage out of the garage, and it was certainly a mess. But we had gotten through with that, and all was going well. And later on, she noticed that the babies weren't feeding very well, and she said they needed some extra nourishment. So off she went to the pet store and got kitten milk and a little eyedropper, and there she fed those little things one at a time. And she dropped the milk into their mouth, and oh, it was a success. Another drop, and oh, what, they were just eating it up until the lights went out. There we were, late at night, feeding baby rabbits with no lights, no electricity, no heat. What to do? Oh, I was ready for vacation to be over. Never did I want this to happen. But we found some candles and all went well. The little baby rabbits had a candle-lit dinner. All is well. And then the day came. We were on the 11th day, but now day number 12. Time to go back to school. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love brought to me the end of rabbit misery.
But we have time limits, and so everybody has worked so hard to get us right under that 8 minutes, and Shirley did a great job. Our next storyteller is Sumana Rangachar. Sumana was born in India and grew up in 1970s Queens, New York, which she says back then the 7-Elevens and hospitals were not overrun by Indian Americans. But she also says it was not always easy to grow up in a minority in her neighborhood, but coming from a traditional culture had advantages. She grew up with Indian dance, music, food, Bollywood, but best of all, she says, she comes from a very close and fiercely loyal family structure. Most of Sumana's stories involve very amusing immigrant experiences. She is an attorney by profession and lives in Montclair with her husband and 3 children. Sumana?
My mother has doled out many a nickname in her time. These are kind of funny nicknames, meant for the family and just so that we would know who she was talking about, but they were also kind of descriptive in nature. For instance, there was Ribbit. Ribbit was a woman who had a very low voice, and my mother thought she sounded a little frog-like. And then there was Matron. Matron, at age 18, looked a little older than her age, according to my mother. And then there was You Know, ran right into that nickname, because after every sentence she would say, You know. So my mother was also the recipient of some really good nicknames as well. Now, her name is Shri Devi. Shri Devi is an Indian name from India, and it's pretty common, but it's a really good name for her because we could change it into Free Devi, which is really the core of my mother. She loves the free stuff. She would look through the newspaper only for free things that were happening around town, or she would clip coupons, but she would keep us she would tell us what was going on in town so that it was really an asset to grow up with her. But once in a while, her zeal at getting a good deal would backfire. One such occasion was I was in college and I went to get my mail, and inside the post box I saw a slip of paper. I didn't see any mail, but I saw the slip of paper. So I took out the slip of paper and it said, "Come to the counter." That was actually better than getting a letter because it sounded like I was going to get a package. So I ran up to the counter and I gave him my slip of paper, and I was waiting very impatiently for my package, and the guy was looking all around, up and down, and disappeared for a couple of seconds, and then showed back up and said, "That is going to be 55 cents, please." And I said, 55 cents? I have to give you 55 cents? Why? Why do I have to give you 55 cents? Because you have to pay the postage on this. So then I said, my mother. So I gave over my 55 cents because I wanted to know what was behind there. And what was behind there was a letter. Well, see, what had happened was my mother thought she could beat the system. So, she didn't want to pay postage for a letter. So she took one of those junk mailers that were mailed out to me in my name in my queen's house. And she opened it up and threw out the junk and put in her letters and then sealed it back up. And then she crossed out my queen's address and she said, "Please forward to my Wesleyan University P.O. box." Stuck it in the mailbox and said, "I beat the system." But unfortunately for me, she did not. But anyway, she has another good nickname, and that nickname was given to her by my son, the first of her many grandchildren, when he was only about 7 or 8 months old. They had this cute little game that they would play. She would sing, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." And my brilliant son would say, "Up above." And that was it. But it was really cute. So they would do it over and over and over, and people would just come around and just laugh and just be so excited that my son thought that must be this lady's name. So he would go around calling her Up Above. So there's a great story that happened to merge these two nicknames, Up Above and Free Lady. It happened about 10 years ago. I got a phone call from my mother, and she, many times she talks to me in our Indian language, which is Kannada, but I'm going to loosely translate what she said. She goes, "Sumo, I have 8 free tickets to some outdoor concert in Central Park. I went to the bank and they were giving out tickets, and I got 8 free tickets. Some guy, I don't know if you know him, or I don't know him at all. You probably don't know him either. I think, his name is Bon Jovi. Bon Jovi. Do you want them?" like, my mother usually has these weird things for me to do, and I'm not usually that excited when she'd ask me to do one of her zany items, but this is different. So I just kind of jumped on it and I said, oh yeah, sure, I'll take all of that. Then she knew this must be good. So she retracted her offer a little bit. And she said, no, you can't take 8 tickets. You can take 4 tickets. Your sister can take the other 4 tickets. And I said, fine, that sounds fair. 4 tickets is good. So I had my 4 tickets, and the anticipated date came. And I was so excited, and we were all packed up in the car with the coolers and the blankets, ready to go to Central Park, when my mother calls. Simone, I'm going to meet you in Central Park. Okay, so my parents live in Manhattan, so coming to Central Park isn't really a big stretch normally, except for today, because I hadn't kept a ticket for her. I doled them all out. And so she would come there, and there was no ticket. So I tried to discourage her, but she wanted to come anyway. And she showed up, and we met there, and then we end up going into the park together. And this park, if you ever see a concert in the Great Lawn, you're walking inside Central Park almost like a mile until you get to the ticket guy, and then you give him your ticket, and then you're in, voila, perfect. Well, we are now walking and walking in the park, and my mother's just chit-chatting away like it's some great thing that she's walking in the park with us, but I am really worried because now I'm going to feel really crappy if my mother has to walk all this way and then she doesn't get to go in. I'll probably end up having to get rid of my ticket, and that's going to suck. So we're seeing the ticket counter. The ticket guy is right in view at this point, and I'm really sweating, and I'm worried, and I don't know what she's doing, but she's just chit-chatting and talking, and then all of a sudden, she goes and she starts talking to the guy behind me. Excuse me, sir, do you have an extra ticket by any chance? Maybe you know somebody who does? Well, I was a little bit like, who is going to have an extra ticket? We're almost at the entrance to this park. What are you talking about? Well, the guy was a little bit intrigued, she's an older lady, and she waited all this while to get an extra ticket. So he took it upon himself, and he went around and looked around and asked. And, we're like almost at the front, and he says to her, oh, I have an extra ticket for you, ma'am, if you want it. And she took it from him, and she said, thank you. And she walked in like as if she assumed she was going to get a ticket the whole time. And that is how, up above and freely, my mother got to see Bon Jovi.
Time we were working on stories, we never knew what Sumana was going to come up with. She had like a different story each time. And we kept saying, oh, maybe one story at a time. Anyway, that was really funny. Our next storyteller is Marcia Almeida, and she's lived in the United States since 1969. She is a member of the board of directors of the Celebrant Foundation and Institute, and for the last 10 years, she's been a certified life cycle celebrant officiating at weddings and memorial services. Her interest in storytelling was sparked by her work as a celebrant, and at the birth of her granddaughter, she wanted to tell her story to keep her granddaughter entertained and open her imagination. And that brought Marcia to the New Jersey Storytelling Guild, and on to be a co-producer of the Family Story Hour on Montclair TV 34. When Marcia is not working, she enjoys spending time with her granddaughter, reading, listening to music, and, of course, telling stories.
I am from the Dominican Republic, and I'm going to tell you a story about my grandmother. My grandmother was the daughter of a Frenchman and a Dominican woman. And every time I saw her, I just saw a very nice, gentle, beautiful giant. I adore her. Till to this day, and she passed away 40 years ago. My grandmother had many wonderful qualities. One of them was her generosity. She believes that you must be generous to your neighbors and to your community. So you always have some chore with the community, which is the reason I do so many stuff. One time I decided that I will do as my grandmother did. My grandmother will be, every Saturday, she will take a basket, put in some flowers, some bread, some fruit, some juice, or anything that was related to the person that she has chosen to visit that week. So, just trying. Being the older granddaughter, I was voluntold to hook up with her. Something that I didn't appreciate because I soon found out that after every visit, there will be a teachable moment for me. And it will go like, you know, when you visit somebody, make sure you don't offend the person that you're visiting. Make sure that when you give something away, it's something that you would like to get. So every time we went to visit, there would be something like that, so I kind of dread it. One time, she will go in and she will say, oh, you know, I haven't seen you in a long time. And I just thought that I wanted to have coffee with you. So she will come out and have the coffee and all this thing and the food and the basket. And I soon realized that it wasn't about the coffee that she was talking about. She just wanted to be with that person. So time passed. She passed away. I got married, came to live to the United States. And she, in one of those trips, I decided that I was going to pay my tribute to my grandmother, and I was going to do exactly what she used to do. So I got all excited about it. I decided it was going to be 5 people. I took 5 envelopes. I went to the market, bought 5 bouquet of flowers, 5 piece bag of bread and butter and cheese, and asked my mother if I can borrow her car. She wasn't too happy about the idea. As you know, sometimes generosity is keep a generation. I asked a friend to drive me, and he agreed. We went to the first house. It was somebody that used to work for my grandmother. We called her Mama. Mama was a person that you would never say no to. I never knew her name. Her name was Mama. So when I went over and Mama, I gave her her flour, her bag of bread and the cheese and the butter and all those things in there, and she just took it and put it aside. I gave her the envelope. And Mama took the envelope and opened it, smiled, and said, aren't you leaving something for Mercedes? And I said, I don't know Mercedes. Well, she's right there, I leave her something. So immediately I opened my bag like a little kid and gave her another envelope. And I said, oh. Then she said, what about? And my friend said, okay, we have to go right now. So the next visit was going to be an easy one. I was going to visit the friend of my grandmother from childhood. She lived in a 3-story walk-up apartment, and it was almost noontime. So from the first floor, we kind of saw somebody on the balcony, and we asked whether the grandmother was there, and they said, yeah, she is, come on up. So we went up. It wasn't an easy 3-step because it was noontime, so it was kind of hot. So we got there, my friend went ahead with the flour, the butter, the bread, the cheese, and the coffee. So he turned around and all of a sudden he said, ¡ay, Dios mío! And I went, uh-oh, uh-oh. So I tried to speed up a little bit, and I went around and I said, oh, oh. I don't know if anyone of you have the opportunity to be at a home funeral. They're not that pretty to look at. Home funerals are kind of a little sad. And in this case, the person was very poor. So we went to it was a plain pine box, no flowers, 4-lit candle around it, and it was just sad. The person wasn't taken very good care of before, so I said, that guy, he didn't look that pretty. So I went in there and I couldn't find Jose. I looked around, there was no Jose. So there was this nice, beautiful lady that came up to me and I said, oh, we're so grateful that you came. And I said, yeah? I kind of started being suspicious about the whole thing. And she said, yeah, we're happy you're here and glad that you came to help. And I said, okay. I had no idea how I was going to help, but I was agreeing because I committed myself to my grandmother's idea. And then I realized how I was going to help. I was going to help by following my grandmother's footsteps. First, I was properly dressed for a home funeral. I had white slap and a gray shirt. And I brought in everything that you could bring in for a home funeral. I had the flour, the coffee, the bread, and the butter. So, in a way, I don't know, coincidence? Maybe. Or it was a way of my grandmother teaching me something after that. So that's how I followed my grandmother's footsteps.
Storyteller is Liz Lynch. Liz was raised in New Jersey, and she's worked as an editor and writer for newspapers in Connecticut, Florida, and Chicago before moving to Montclair with her family and becoming a freelance writer and family history researcher. Her news and arts reporting has been published in the Miami Herald and the Chicago Sun-Times and Request magazine, among others. One of her essays was recently published in the memoir collection Biting the Bullet, Essays in the Courage of Women, published by Charterhouse Press in 2015. Liz?
So I am fairly sure that everybody in this room at some time or another has been asked, what's on your mind? And I'm fairly sure everybody has an elevator speech of some sort. I'm like, nothing, that's always good. Or, oh, same old, same old. I come from an Irish family that will tell you. Unfortunately, this doesn't always work out well. Now, as we know, Irish people are famed for the gift of the gab. We tend to call ours the gift of reverse gab. We give you what's on our mind, somehow it doesn't work out. My father really was a great exemplar of this tradition, and I'll just give one quick example. He had just gotten out of the service after World War II. He asked a young lady out to a date in Brooklyn. They were going to go to some hall and dance. He splurged on a gardenia, very expensive. She was thrilled. She pinned it in her hair, and they were swirling around the dance floor. It's beautiful, beginning, whatever. And all of a sudden, my father said, "What stinks?" And the lady pulls back and goes, "It's my gardenia." And I can say, needless to say, she did not become my mother. The relationship did not last long, and Dad had pretty much established the family gene of not being able to say the right thing at the right time. I got this gene as well, and I found out probably one of the most pointed ways you could find out. I found out in Catholic grade school during religion class. So, didn't get into too much trouble at first. The questions are extremely straightforward. You know, the sisters up there going, "All right, class, who made us?" And, "Yes, Elizabeth, God made us." "Very good, very good." "Why?" "Because He loves us." So I aced it. I was doing great. But then, I think it was around 4th grade, they started getting theoretical. Hypotheticals. And that's where I really came into my own. You know, all right, children, let's think about a man who goes to church every Sunday. And he kneels at the right times, he says the correct prayers, everything is all in place, but you know, he's really not paying attention. He's not really there in his heart and his mind. Do you think he should just keep going to church? "Yes, Elizabeth." "No." I mean, as big as Helen's family, but we were up there. And I was just like, no, he should just stay home until he gets a clue, you know. And she says, interesting. Anyone else? My little world is rocked. I've never been anyone else at this point in my entire academic career. And so I'm like, really? And next to me is my desk mate and friend, Teresa. And I want to emphasize that Teresa was a truly sweet girl. And she did this in a truly sweet, open spirit. And she said, you know, yes, Teresa. Well, sister, I think he should just keep going. And then maybe at some point, the Holy Spirit will enter his heart and he will know what the true meaning of the sacrifice of the Mass is. She said, oh, excellent, Teresa, wonderful. You did a great job. And Teresa sits down and I look at her and go, how did you know that? And she goes, it was in the book. So the light is going on, you know. But it wasn't on all the way. It went on all the way one Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving dinner, it might have been the following year, it might have been that same year, I don't remember. Now, as I say, I come from a large Catholic family. Only seven, sorry. But still large enough that my parents were constantly trying to find ways that they could kick arbitration decisions down the road. And one of the decisions that they did this with was the wishbone. We had a tradition in our family that any kid who found the wishbone had the incontrovertible right to pick the kid who would pull on the other end. That way my parents were out of any dispute. And that particular year, my older sister, the oldest sibling, Barbara, picked the wishbone. And Barbara went at this with all the humility and, you know, gentleness of, I would say, Elizabeth I, awarding earldoms to her favorites. She just got us all in front of her and she said, all right, tough decision this year. I really need to hear all of your wishes first. And she said this. She said, if it's worthy, you get to pick. So now my oldest brother is just like, no, I'm just not playing. And he went off and he watched football or whatever. And then the three youngest kids totally just disgraced themselves with horribly unworthy wishes. I want a Tonka truck, big as life. No. I want a Twinkie that's the size of the driveway. Oh, just stop. Don't waste our time. So they all just went boom, boom, boom. And that left me and my sister Patty. And we were separated by 18 months and bitter, bitter rivalries. Who would get the best grades, who sang the best, who had the best Briar Horse collection. And I knew that this was going to be tough. Patty was going to be a worthy competitor. And I'm thinking, okay, have to come up with something, something really good, something that really, really pops and is great. I mean, this is the 70s, we're not using terms like this, but I'm thinking in that equivalent thing. And Barbara says, Liz, what? And I go, I wish I were rich. And I go, no, that was flat. I don't think that's going to be enough. And Barbara said, it's a pretty good wish. Patty, what do you say? And as God is my witness, this is what she said. She said, well, I wish there were birds and flowers and trees all over the world, even in the Sahara Desert. And Barbara's like, whoa, that's good. Yeah, come on, let's get to it. She's like, no. I'm like, frantically, like, no, you don't understand. Well, I was going to do with that money. I could irrigate. I could irrigate the whole desert. I couldn't. Stop it. Elizabeth, you're embarrassing yourself. Just stop it. So she and Patty went off in the corner and they pulled the wishbone and I am sitting there seething. I'm like, I just know that kid is wishing for a Briar Horse. You know, there's no irrigation happening. But I couldn't do anything about it. But I did learn a lesson. I learned that when someone asks you what's on your mind, it's much, much, much better to always go by the book than off the cuff. Thank you.
Our last storyteller is Wendy McNeil. Wendy says it was her uncle Willie Tom and Frankie, Big Herb, and Aunt Louise who would let loose on a daily basis with stories about their lives. And these stories, she says, were full of pain, compassion, and humor, and told their saga of growing up in the Jim Crow of the South and of struggling to live in one of America's greatest urban centers. Wendy inherited this desire to tell her stories, growing up in Newark, going to Catholic schools for 12 years, and attending New York University. And, she says, pursuing a career that once led her to have lunch with Hillary. Wendy says she loves her mom, and her dog, and her community, and enjoys discussions about politics and music. But most of all, she says, she enjoys listening to and telling stories.
By telling you two important facts about me. One is that I am a demon at research. I can find out anything about anybody at any time. And two, I love to be in love. And I've had a wonderful amour de corps in my life. There was Victor, who was a computer programmer and who looked exactly like Will Smith. There was Michael, the corporate attorney, and there was Stephen, the curator. But one year, I was suffering from a dry period. And so I decided, after reading an article in the New Yorker magazine, to go online. And I went to OkCupid because it's free. So what did I have to lose, right? So I became a serial dater. Now I just want to take a moment with an aside and say that no matter how the man may present himself to you, if he is the owner and caregiver of 10 cats, stay away. So, after many dates, I met Richard. And we met at that beautiful candlelit restaurant, Italian restaurant, right there at the corner of South Fullerton and Bloomfield Avenue. I think you know the place. And it was love at first sight. We had so much in common. Our kids were the same age. We were both divorced. He was smart. It was fabulous. And we did so much together. We spent Christmas and New Year's together. We went on a weekend cruise. We did jazz concerts. One day, I'm sitting in my apartment, and I hear this little buzz. And it comes up to my ear, it pulls my ear, and I realize it's my research demon. And my research demon says to me, research this man. And then the research demon comes right into my face. It looks like a little hummingbird. And it came hovering right to my face. And it said, research this man and research him now. So I did. And yes, I learned a lot about Richard that I didn't know before. Like, for example, he has a huge internet footprint. He takes hundreds of selfies, and I thought selfies was a millennial thing and not a baby boomer thing, but hey, you know, we all indulge in these self-effacing activities. And then I learned that Richard had two houses. Not the house that I had gone to, which was assessed at $400,000, but that he had another house that was assessed at $1.5 million. And that house had on the deed a woman's name. And that this woman of Asian descent was a physician. And then I dug some more, and I found out that there was the birth of a baby girl that took place about a week after Richard and I had gone to Lincoln Center for the Jazz Festival. And then I saw another announcement of a wedding that took place in 2007, and it began to compute in my head, and I calculated the fact that Richard was married, that he was currently married, at this very moment married. And my heart stopped. And I went to bed, woke up the next morning, and went to work, swollen, red eyes and everything. Came home, took my dog out, sat and had a glass of wine, and I thought of some words of advice that my mother once gave me. She said, Wendy, there are times when you're going to have to be very gracious and poised and kind, and you're going to have to behave like a lady. But then there are going to be times when you're going to have to behave like the colored girl from the 4th Ward of Newark. And so I called Richard. And there was, before he could even say, hello, doll, the tirade started. It was so visceral. It was so much part of my gut that I cannot even begin to tell you what I said to Richard, but I ended by saying, Richard, I feel as if you raped me. And from Richard, there was silence. A heavy, deep, unending silence. So I hung up the phone. And I went on with my life. The dog walking, the work, the whole 9 yards. And then one day I woke up and I said, Wendy, you want to be in love again. And I started to think, well, how can I make this happen? How am I going to meet the one? And while thinking about that, I hear the little buzz again. And it's my research demon. And this time it has this little quirky look on its face, not unlike a Ryan Gosling meme. And it hovers in front of me, and it says, girl, the next time, research.